Good afternoon, folks. We welcome you to the second of our unit record report presentations. Joining me with this webinar today is Marla Skelly. She is our Associate Director for Training and Compliance. My name is Ann Voiles. I'd like to go ahead and turn this program over to Marla.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is, as Ann said, Marla Skelly, and I'm the Associate Director for Compliance. And I have been with WASAC not even a year yet. So some of you know me from my long history in financial aid. I've been associated with higher ed for over 35 years, which is a little scary. And in capacities of in a financial aid office and in the private sector doing some consulting and implementing financial aid systems. So I've been around a while, and I'm very happy to be here. So I'm going to go right into this presentation. There will be an opportunity for questions down the road if you need them, and also for your information, we are recording this. So the purpose of the unit record report is to provide institutional reports and profiles that allows the WASAC to compare institutional performance and information across the state. So it's a tool that we use to assess the needs of students, and it also guides legislative and other policy decisions. Keep in mind that Becky and Rochelle rely on this data for advocating on behalf of students. So it's really critical that we get good, accurate information. The unit record informs changes to state aid programs, and primarily this happens through modeling that we perform annually and quarterly to help us see the activity in the programs and how the awards are going from year to year. We also use the unit record to minimize any ad hoc data reporting that has to happen. The clearer we can be up front, the less ad hoc kinds of information we need to get from you to perform our legislative responsibilities. So the unit record provides us with a centralized data repository. This is the timeline that we're looking at. The unit record manual is available electronically now, and the URL where it can be found is listed. You can get to any of our manuals from the wasac.wa.gov. The unit record is opening August 13th. That's Monday. I can hardly believe it. So keep that in mind. October 19th, the finalized report is due back to WASAC. Through the remainder of October and all of November, we analyze the data that you send us. In December, that's when we hope to have our piece of it finalized so that we can start responding to questions that we get from the policymakers, legislative staff, because we've already started getting some questions about how we anticipate things may shake out. So this is our primary tool for getting the information that we need so that we have comprehensive data for the legislative staff and policymakers. January of 2019, your institutional profiles are available. These profiles you can access through the portal unit record section, and you'll be able to compare it allows us to compare your schools to the various sectors. Historical data is included, so it really is something that you can look at to see what your institution has done over time. So we're going to start the overview of the manual, and it basically has 5 pieces. We've got the introduction, which is the overview, purpose, changes, and the timeline that we just talked about. Chapter 1 is the general instructions. Chapter 2, data definitions. And this is important to those of you who may be newer to the process. These definitions can help you think about what it is we need you to give us. And Chapter 3 is Reporting Application User's Guide. And the last piece are the appendices. The appendices are probably the most important part of the manual for you. And that's because the appendices contain, in Appendix A, need-based and non-need-based program recipients that you need to report. B is the record layout, which has the file format and valid inputs. C is system edits that prevent the file upload and import. You'll probably be earmarking this one. D is a quick lookup by financial aid program, and E is a quick lookup by the unit record report field name. You'll need to be submitting a CSV file submission, and building that file, you will need to report only students who receive financial aid based on the 2017-18 FAFSA or WASFA year. The WASFA, for those of you who may be new to this, it took me a while to really figure out the acronym, is Washington Application for Student Financial Assistance. That is our application for our undocumented students in the state who may be eligible for financial aid, the State Need Grant Program and CBS. The report files are in CSV format with a header row. And you absolutely need to have the header row that's here. Review the file definitions in Chapter 2 of the manual and record layout in the appendices B and C to determine your valid field comment. The experienced data administrators on the call are accustomed to this, but there's some new folks who this may be your first year with the unit record. Keep in mind that we are here to help you as you go along if you have any questions regarding this. So what are your reporting requirements? You need to determine which students to report. And there are 3 categories that generally that need to be reported. The first one is need-based recipients from the 2017-18 FAFSA or WASFA are required. The need-based FAFSA, the programs for need-based recipients or other programs for the FAFSA or WASFA data may or may not be available. And then we have the non-need-based federal loan requirements. That is the federal direct unsubsidized loans, federal parent loans, and the federal Grad Plus loans. In this last group, if they're only receiving non-need-based loans, you don't have to report those, but you certainly can. Oh, the federal loans you do, forgive me, the federal loans you do need to report. For need-based recipients, our intent is to capture term by term all financial aid disbursements in the unit record. Report for the 2017-18 financial aid received based on the filing of the WASFA or the FAFSA. On next year's unit record, it'll be all the financial aid received based on the 2018-19 FAFSA or WASFA. The programs you need to report, and for these, the FAFSA fields are required for the Pell Grant, Federal Pell Grant, Federal SEOG, Federal Work Study, Federal Perkins Loan, Federal Direct Subsidized Loan, and your State Need Grant, the College Bound Scholarship, Passport to College Scholarship, State Work Study on and off campus, the Teacher Shortage Conditional Grant, and the Need-Based Institutional Gift Aid. For the Teacher Shortage Conditional Grant, you might make a note that it needs to be reported under the conditional loans. And the Teacher Shortage Conditional Grant should not be confused with the Student Teaching Grant, which was available in 2016-17, and it was reported under other state-funded gift assistance. you'll see notes throughout regarding that. Other programs that you need to report: the Federal Teach Grant, Federal Health Professional Scholarships and Grants, Federal Health Professional Loans, Opportunity Scholarship, other state-funded assistance, Worker Retraining Program funds, need-based institutional gift aid, and institutional employment if it's need-based. Our goal is to provide a complete picture of state aid. If your need-based recipients receive the BFET or the Basic Food and Employment Training Funds, and they are easily reportable from your system, include those amounts received for the same period of time reported for your recipients. The BFET are a subset of worker retraining funds, so if your college receives these funds, report them under the worker retraining funds. We do put that we would like you to report these if you are able to report them. The federal non-need-based loan recipient programs that need to be reported are the Federal Direct Unsubsidized Loan, Federal Parent Plus Loan, and the Federal Grad Plus Loan. The information reported on these will be minimal for the federal loan recipients who are not also receiving need-based assistance. Changes for the 2017-18 Unit Record Report portal are referred to on page 3 in the manual. The cost of attendance, or COA, and tuition waivers, you need to report the full assessed tuition amounts in COA before the application of tuition waivers. This is required for the 2017-18 unit record. Report the waivers as either need-based or non-need-based institutional gift aid as appropriate. We really are looking for consistency with other final reporting, such as in the Seesaw. Again, this year will be a list of any unserved students that didn't show up on the unit record for you to review and respond why they were reported unserved. We really are working towards getting cleaner data from the institution, not as much back and forth as you've probably experienced with Ann in the last few years. Consistency with other WASAC reporting. Edits for the State Need Grant, CBS, and PTC data will be compared against Seesaw data. Formerly, we compared our information to the final interim report, so this is a change. Race and ethnicity data, any blank fields will be counted as N or false. So we would prefer that you have an entry of yes or Y or N notation in any field where the data is known. If there is no data provided, again, any blank will be counted as N. So we really are encouraging you to complete this as you have it on your campuses. For the teacher shortage conditional grant, state programs with the first disbursements in 2017 or 18 should report teacher shortage as conditional loans. Other changes for the federal Pell Grant, our old value was 0 to 5815. The new value is 0 to 8880. We're accommodating the full year Pell. The federal Teach Grant is was 0 to 4,000. This year it'll be 0 to 99999. For all financial aid recipients reported, the following fields are required. There needs to be a Social Security number, SSN, first name, last name, gender, are they a state resident, year in school, financial aid per term even if it's 0, and the enrollment status per term. For Social Security number, I just want to stress that for some of our WASFA students or people who don't have Social Security numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 are not valid. So really be careful when you're looking, especially on those applicants' information. We need you to report financial aid for each of 5 terms. report enrollment status for each of the 5 terms, and report non-need-based aid received for all need-based recipients. As I mentioned earlier, the CSV file requires a header row, and we do have a sample available on the WASAC site. Financial aid reported for each of the 5 terms. Summer 1 is used primarily for a lead header awards. Fall, winter is applicable to all but semester schools, but semester schools should report that as 0. Spring, and Summer 2, which is used primarily for trailer awards. When should you include summer aid in your reporting? Review Chapter 2 of the manual for detailed information. Summer aid is reported on amounts received based on the 2017-18 FAFSA or WASFA. So in general, leader or header schools should report Summer 1 aid, and Summer 2 should be reported as 0. Trailer schools, the reverse. You report Summer 2 aid, and Summer 1 should be reported as 0. Clock hour schools may report aid for both summer terms. If the recipient is enrolled in more than 1 term in summer, report the total amount received and enrollment status as 1 enrollment term. That applies to those terms that you may have as a Summer 1, Summer 2, but it's really part of your summer trail term. So report those as summer trailing or Summer 2, and vice versa if Summer 1 is your lead. It's possible to have data for both summer terms if your institution elects to award money such as the workforce funds in the summer. Other fields that need to be reported for 2017-18 FAFSA and WASFA filers. Marital status, is the student dependent or independent? Family size, number in college, family income, expected family contribution, cost of attendance, need duration, and need amount. We're going to talk a little about the special notes in selected fields. So, Social Security numbers. Duplicates are not accepted. Files containing duplicate SSNs will not upload. This goes back to that, make sure that they're not invalid kinds of numbers. SSNs of state need grant and college-bound scholarship recipients are compared to the Social Security numbers reported in the FNG CBS Seesaw records. So if they don't match, you have a problem. SSNs of passport to college recipients will be compared to recipient portal data records. And discrepancies are going to show on edit reports. The numbers have to match between the unit record and the interim SSNs. If you discover any discrepancies, you'll need to contact us to correct links to ensure the data or history is correct. On these, you're primarily going to work with Anne on these issues, so some of you may get to know her very well. Year in school, this is pretty standard. When you report year in school, 1 is freshman or first year, 2 is sophomore or second year, 3 is junior or third year, 4 is senior or fourth year, 5 is unclassified or fifth year, 6 is graduate, 7 is professional, 8 is other. It's required for all recipients, and this is an important piece. You need to report the status as of the beginning of the term of the recipient's last financial aid disbursement for the 2017-18 year. So if you are reporting that they are a graduate student, or they were a senior when they got their first disbursement and then they changed to a graduate student in their second term, you need to report them as a graduate student. Don't automatically use the year in school reported on the FAFSA or the WASFA. Students might think they're a junior because they've been at your institution for 3 years, but they've only completed 25 credits. You need to give them the year in school that for the number of credits for which they've completed. Report the highest year in school for which the student attended when the student's financial aid was dispersed. Code 8 or other is used to report need-based aid for Running Start students or other students who have not yet graduated from high school. On your family information, family size is generally reported from the FAFSA or the WASFA. It must be 2 or higher for dependent students, and it must be 1 or higher for independent students. Number in college must be 1 or higher, but it cannot exceed the family size. The parents' enrollment in college should not be included unless your institution included them as part of a professional judgment decision. Report the family income, your taxable and untaxed, based on a review of the 2017-18 FAFSA or WASFA. Often that's going to be the 2015 income from the FAFSA or the WASFA. But if you used a professional judgment decision to use a later year, then make sure you report that income. Report integers without a dollar sign or cents. This is the only place in the file where negative numbers can be used. So if they have a negative income, you can put it in this field. Reporting the expected family contribution should be based on federal methodology or FM that's calculated by the U.S. Department of Education based on the 2017-18 FAFSA or WASFA. Report the FMEFC even if your institution uses institutional methodology that produces that IMEFC. EFCs may be adjusted by professional judgment decisions, and it should reflect the number of months reported in the need duration. For the cost of attendance, most campuses use several student budgets to reflect any changes in a student's living expenses. Report the student budget amount related to the need amount, and it should be based on the number of months reported in the need duration. So the cost of attendance, need duration, and EFC must be the same number of months. The standard determination of need is taking the cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution to get to your need amount. Base all 3 items on numbers of the months reported in the need duration. For the need amount, report the amount used in the disbursement of aid. Report need amount as 0 or higher. Do not report a negative value. Last year, I think we had a number of schools that reported negative values as need, and that just won't work, and you're going to get we'll ask about that. Report need duration based on the number of months for which the need amount and cost of attendance were reported, which is normally integers from 1 to 12. An example would be your standard 9-month setup, and then the student leaves after 1 term. You are not required to calculate everything to the 3-month duration. You can, but it's not required. We just want to make sure that what you're reporting in these 3 fields is consistent for the same period of time as what was required. The term enrollment status, if they're not enrolled, for the credit-based school, just put NA. Same is true of the clock hours, and how that equates to the unit record codes is 0 or not enrolled. For full-time enrollment, for credits, that's generally 12 credits or more. Clock hours, 300 or more. And you'll see a note that says, typically clock hour term awards are for full-time enrollment status, except that the final term may be paid for a part-time enrollment status. And the unit record code that's used for full-time is 1. Half-time is usually 6 to 8.9 credits, or 150 to 224 clock hours, and it should be coded with a 2 or half-time. 3/4 time is 9 to 11.9 credits, or 225 to 299 clock hours, or and the code is 3 or 3/4 time. Less than half time is usually 3 to 5.9 credits, 75 to 149 clock hours, and should be coded as 5 or half time. Clock hour schools can have 5 terms to report. The approximate term date ranges for clock hour institutions. Again, this is approximation. Summer 1 is from July 1 to September 11th of 2017. Fall is September 12th to November 22nd of 2017. Winter is November 23rd, 2017 to February 5th, 2018. Spring, February 6th to April 18th, 2018. Summer 2 would be April 19th to June 30th, 2018. For state need grant, college-bound scholarship, and the passport to college, report the final awards received by the student. The unit record reporting tool checks against seesaw records, and this is critical. If there is discrepant information from one to another, it has to be resolved. And this is what takes so much time, and you often get emails or calls from Ann to try and figure out what it is you're trying to report. You need to review the FNG, CBS, and passport differences report to verify all recipients and the awards are correctly reported. Make sure that you do look at all those differences reports. It will give you an idea of what we're looking at, and it gives you a clue as to where to start to make any corrections that you need to make. Reporting of tuition waiver dollars for FNG and CBS recipients. To the extent possible, institutions are encouraged to report full or partial tuition waivers received by their needy students. And it's required for 2017. Last year it was optional to report the tuition waivers. And the reason we need this is because it helps the state data show more accurately on all forms of assistance that needy students are receiving. Include the full assessed tuition and fee amounts in each student's cost of attendance to reflect tuition prior to the application of waivers. We need to know what the cost of attendance is that the student's need-based aid is determined on. And you'll need to report the waivers as a financial aid resource in the appropriate field, either need-based institutional gift aid or non-need-based institutional gift aid. State work study, report on campus and off-campus employment separately. Report students' total gross earnings and include the employer match or institutional share. Include summer employment. You can report either actual gross earnings based on monthly cutoff dates or institutional payroll dates, or average gross term earnings over the academic year for all terms the student was enrolled at least half time. Keep in mind the total needs to be very close to what was reported on to the state work study program staff. Report institutional gift aid as either need-based institutional gift aid, which is all institutional grants, scholarships, and or waivers awarded solely or partially on a review of the 2017-18 FAFSA or WASPA. Non-need-based institutional gift aid is all institutional grants, scholarships, and or waivers awarded without regard to the FAFSA or WASPA. Other state-funded gift assistance report sources of state aid not reported elsewhere. And examples include the American Indian Endowed Scholarship, Washington Scholars, Early Achievers Opportunity Grants, or the Global Opportunity Grant, which is specific to the University of Washington. This section is going to be talking about edits. Edits help ensure data quality, which is key for us. Edits are softer for students receiving only non-need-based federal aid, And the FAFSA-related edits are also softer for students not receiving the FAFSA or WASFA required aid types. Some of you are not reporting need or COA if there's no FAFSA or WASFA. If you have that information, report it. There are edits that prevent your file from uploading, and you need to refer to Appendix C, which is page 45 in the manual, to identify what those are. But some examples of errors that prevent the upload are the header row missing, or it's invalid, duplicate Social Security numbers, invalid codes, blanks reported in all required fields. So if it's required and you've left it blank, you won't be able to upload the file. Be sure to review all 12 items. Non-overridable edit examples, again, you refer to Appendix C, pages 46 to 48 in the manual. Total aid reported is 0. Non-resident with FNG or other state aid. Number in college is greater than family size. If the file upload worked, but then secondary edits run, you'll be required to correct the student record before you can submit it. For overridable edit examples, refer to Appendix C, pages 46 through 48. The field content is as follows. If the need amount is 0 with need-based aid, budget changed with dropped credits, year in school for aid type, Federal Grad Plus loan, and the student graduated mid-year. Date of birth is outside the normal range. Cost of attendance minus expected family contribution, calculated by the edit program, does not equal need amount reported by the college. Any conflict has to be remedied. Some reminders that you need to keep in mind. Keep your override comments concise and to the point, but with sufficient detail to directly address the edit message. Report family income using the SNG income calculation, not federal total income field from the FAFSA. We're asking for two separate things. Generally, you should match the income reported in CSV student record for the 2017-18 unit record. When calculating family income for a dependent student, count the parent's adjusted gross income, the AGI, and non-taxable income. You don't include the student's income when you're calculating family income for a dependent. When you're calculating family income for an independent student, you count the student's AGI and non-taxable income of the spouse if that student is married. For both dependent and independent students, if the AGI is not present, that is, the parent and students are not tax filers, use the sum of all taxable plus non-taxable income. The financial aid administrator may, but you're not required, to subtract the following allowable exclusions. So you can exclude taxable earnings from need-based employment programs, such as federal work study and need-based employment portions of fellowships and assistantships, taxable student grant and scholarship aid reported to the IRS in the AGI. This includes AmeriCorps benefits as well as grants and scholarship portions of fellowships and assistantships, untaxed combat pay or special combat pay, earnings from work under a cooperative education program offered by a college. Title IV grant aid should be subtracted from the base income regardless of whether it was taxed or untaxed. Child support income must be excluded from income calculations for less than half-time students, but not from other enrollment categories. Veterans benefits are treated in the same manner as for purposes of eligibility for Title IV financial aid. Another reminder to you is in the override comment, we want you to include the FAFSA transaction number that you use to award the student when addressing the unit record seesaw discrepancies related to family income, family size, number in college, or expected family contribution. The reason we need this is that, and it makes it easier for WASAC staff, is let's say you award and disperse financial aid on a second transaction. And as you probably know, students might make some correction, or they decide to add another institution to their student aid report. That creates a new transaction. We at WASAC receive FAFSAs for all students, and so we may get 3 or 4 different FAFSA SAR transactions here. If you tell us which transaction you paid on, then we can then compare apples to apples. So it helps us determine what the valid ISR was that you paid from. Report an adjusted expected family contribution according to the need duration if the student attended less than full-time, full year. Report all known race categories for each student, even where Hispanic origin is marked yes. This eliminates gaps in our research data. Tips and best practices. Upload your CSV file early. Please don't wait for the deadline. There's a lot of work that goes on here after you submit the file, and the earlier you do it, the better off we all are. Review the 17-18 unit record manual and training materials, and test upload using the portal training environment. This is really a wonderful source for you. This portal training environment you can enter information into, and the next day it's back to where it should be. So this is just temporary data, and it doesn't stay. So it's really a place for you to play and try and figure out what you need to do. Use the unit record informational reports to check for consistency and validity. For CTCs, review the SB CTC 2017-18 manual when available. And please contact WASAC with questions or problems not addressed in the manual. We will be sending notices to you all when the session has been posted and is available to you to share with others. Are there any final questions on the information that's been presented?
What I think we're going to do, folks, is go ahead and unmute in order to allow some conversation and have your questions. Okay, hearing none, I think we're going to go ahead and remute folks. Okay.
Anne's on now. She gets to do the hard part here.
All righty. We're going to do what is hopefully a fairly quick walk through the navigation in our portal. For those of you who have not worked in the unit record portal before, we have our address at the top of the page, thefortress.wa.gov/wasac/portal. There is another way to get to this site. If you go to our regular www.wasac.wa.gov and look in the main menu across the top, if you look at administration, there should be a financial aid resources page, and one of the options at the top of that page is a link to this very landing site. If you choose to enter the portal by logging into this general login here, it will take you to a general menu from which you have to select the unit record. If you're going to be working directly in the unit record and aren't expecting necessarily to look at any of the other programs, you can click this unit record link down here at the bottom, and it will take you to the landing page directly. This would be what you see if you log in through the general login. And as you see, it should list whatever programs you have access to, and you would just select the unit record report. This is the welcome page for the unit record. And as soon as you are ready to upload your CSV file, you would click this and it will take you to the next page. Please be sure that what you select is a CSV file. Otherwise, you will not be able to upload that file. Once you have uploaded a file and you return to the site, as this bottom bullet shows, you won't be seeing this landing page. You will be taken directly to where you left off. This is the upload site. Browse through your PC for that CSV file, select it, and then click Upload. As your file is uploading, you should see a processing bar similar to this. It will tell you what the progress is if you have a very large file. If you have a fairly small file, this will zip by so quickly you don't see it. So don't be concerned if you're a small school and that processing bar doesn't show up. Now, if you are uploading and you receive what I'd call a fatal error, this means that your file did not upload, and it does tell you what row the error is in, what the error was. And at that point, you can discard the file. This particular error message only shows one issue, but quite often, if you have several, it will list as many as you have. So once you've discarded the file, correct your main file and then attempt another upload. If you're a large school and you realize once you have started uploading your data that perhaps you have the wrong file or there is something else wrong with it, you can abort the process. There should be a discard upload file, and as soon as you click that, it should return you back to that main upload page. Once your upload is complete, there is a quick summary that we ask that you take a look at. It should have your population broken out by their enrollment status. If you are a CTC, you won't see all of these categories. It will only show you the categories for the student records that you have uploaded. So if you only have freshman and sophomore, you won't see any of these other categories. The processing may take a little while if you have a large file, and you can begin working on these as they show up, but as long as you see this refresh button, it means that the program is still processing your edits. Periodically, you might want to refresh that, and it will bring in additional records. Once that processing has been complete, this refresh button disappears. So that will be your clue that you have all of your edits available to you for correction. You can sort your edits, generally speaking, by any one of these categories, by last name, by the edit error type, whether they're overwritable or not. So you can make that choice by clicking up here to do the entire file, or if you want, you can select any one of these column headings to resort your file. One caveat is that you won't be able to process your file any further if you have any non-overwritable edits. You must correct those first in order to move forward. Any of your overwritable edits can either be fixed or overridden with a reason. And the way you would access that student record is to click on the student's Social Security number. That will open up the student record, an example of which you see here. And the errors that pertain to that student are shown up at the top. If they're overwritable, you'll see an override button. If they're not overridable, you'll see what looks like a stop sign, a little red stop sign, which means that absolutely has to be addressed. With an overridable error, we suggest that you take a look at what that error is. So if it's, something that's, not enrolled when fall term 8 is reported, there may be a reason for that. Perhaps, for whatever reason, you can either correct that or tell us why you think the information that you've submitted is valid. We'll take a look at that when the report has been submitted, and then if we have any other questions, we will contact you. As I mentioned, you can either edit or override. Be sure that you click Save, and this is where you edit directly into whatever box you find that error in. So if it says not enrolled, if there's aid reported in any one of these boxes for any one of these programs, you may want to change that enrollment status. If you prefer to override, if you click that override button, this is the little pop-up box you'll see. You can enter whatever your comment is here. This is where we were asking that you be concise as possible, and we ask that it be directly related to the edit error that's received. Sometimes we see an involved answer that we sometimes question because it doesn't appear to be related to the edit that we're seeing there. So we want to be sure that it's concise so that we can see what it is, review it, and then get back to you right away if there's a question. Make sure that you click the Save button. Once you have clicked that, you'll notice that the edit grays out. And if you want to double check what it is you placed in that comment box, if you hover your cursor over the blue eye icon, the comment pops up in this little box that you see here. The next step would be to either click to continue or take a look at this differences report. If you look at this before you look at any of the edit errors, that's just a preview. Generally, if you do the click to continue, it will take you to that differences report. And what you will see is actually 4 different tabs: State Need Grant, College Bound, Passport to College, and this Missing Unserved Students report. This will list any of the discrepancies that show up for the records that you've entered. If you have addressed those edits through that original edit page, you will see a Y in the override requested column. That means you've already addressed that edit and you don't need to do anything further with it. That will show up on a separate report that we receive once you've submitted your unit record, and then we can review it from there. On the other hand, if you see a blank, as you see here in this arrow, that means that that edit has not yet been addressed, and you will need to take a look at that record. You will see some type of a link where you can either click that and open up that unit record, or if you don't see a link, then you would go into the search function in order to find that student. If you have a large number of edits, what we suggest is that you download the entire report for that program into a CSV file that you can review, and then come back to the unit record and make those corrections in the student record. If you have an existing record that needs an edit correction, then you go back up to the top of the page, and under that unit record option, there should be a search option on the menu. So go ahead and click that, and it will open up the student record that you saw earlier so that you can address and make those corrections. If you find, however, that you are missing a record, back on this original edit landing page, there is a button for Add a New Unit Record to the report. So if you click that, it will open up a blank unit record. There are 2 tabs. and we ask that you thoroughly complete both to the best of your ability with the information that you have, and then make sure that you click Save. That first tab is the Demographics and Need section, and the second tab has to do with the aid that student has received. And this is an example of the different programs that you'll find listed on that second tab, as well as the columns for the various terms that you will be reporting. This last tab, the Missing FNG Unserved Students, actually has to do with the students for whom you have reported in Seesaw as unserved, eligible but unserved students, but for whom we do not see a unit record sent in. So those students will show up on this report with the information that you reported to us in Seesaw as to their enrollment status. The first thing we ask that you do is that you review the information that shows here on this screen quickly to see whether or not there are any students that you recognize that actually may have received aid for whom you need to then enter a complete record. And we ask that you do that first, go back up into that search, go back to that edit page, click Add a Unit Record, enter the information for that student, click Save. Then when you come back to this report, that student will disappear from the unserved list that you see here, okay? So that would be the initial step that we ask, so that you initially clear out all of those for whom you recognize perhaps there was an omission. Next, what we ask you to do is to download a CSV report, and this top half of the screen shows you a blank copy of a download. What I've done is I've highlighted all of the what I call verify columns. These are the columns for which you will enter new information. We ask that you not change any of the original information that is downloaded from the portal in any of these unserved enrollment columns, because what we will do is we will end up comparing that to what changes you have made. The bottom half shows you an example of how this report would be corrected, or where you would be able to show us corrected information. If there are no changes, if all of the information that you have reported, say for example in this one, Betty Bradley, all of this information across her row is correct, you don't need to make any changes in any of these verify columns. You would just indicate yes. And that is our clue that there have been no changes, that what you have in Seesaw is correct. There is no unit record necessary because she did not receive any aid, but her enrollment as correctly shown in Seesaw is reflected here. If there are changes, say in this case where a student was shown in Seesaw as full-time, but somehow, some way, they changed to, say, less than half-time or half-time. In this case, they were not enrolled, but now are full-time for that term. This is where you would indicate those changes. And it's always to be placed in this verify or change column associated with the term that you're working with. That being said, you save this report and you send it back to us. The reason this report is important is if there are many changes to your unserved population, that can affect your allotments for the following year. So this is our way of double-checking to make sure that the Seesaw reflects accurately what your unserved population enrollment statuses were. That said, I'd like to ask that during the year, as these changes take place, that you go into Seesaw and make the corrections as you go through the year rather than do that at the end of the year when this unit record is due. If you do that, this list will be much, much shorter or much, much easier to complete. As I mentioned, you save that to your PC, you send it back to us by secure email, and that button is on the same screen as these unserved reports. If for some reason you find yourself working on this report, because I do know the portal has like a 10 or 15 minute, if you don't make any clicks, it does shut down. So what we suggest is if you end up logging out to work on the CSV and log back in, you either come back to this screen or you can send it to us through the Files and Memos option that's available in the main menu at the top of the portal screen. So very important, send it back to us. If we don't see this, we will contact you because I do keep track. So once you have addressed each of these tabs, and for these programs, you would work directly into the student's unit record. With this one, there is actually a file that you return to us. If necessary, you can then go back to that edit list or click to continue. I'd like to just reiterate again, if you have any Social Security matches, take a look at where that mismatch takes place. If it's a problem with the unit record can be edited directly while you're in there working on your unit record by going to the search screen, finding that student record, and making the correction there. If, on the other hand, the problem is on the Seesaw end, perhaps it was misreported at the beginning of the year, that needs to be handled through WASAC staff. And so you would send us an email securely, provide us with the information. You can use the same send an email button to do that. We will acknowledge that and then contact our IT staff in order to get that resolved for you. At this point, once again, you have another opportunity to go back to that main edit list or click to continue. Just before you're ready to submit, we have this institutional program total report. It is a comparison of the last 4 years, including the current year that you are reporting on, with percentage changes both on dollars and on numbers of recipients. Most of the time, we expect that there will be only slight changes, less than, say, 5%, 10% between years. If there are larger changes, we will come back and ask you about that. But just kind of take a look at the data that you find on this report to ensure that it looks correct to you. And then if it does, then you would go ahead and click this to continue. Once again, you have the opportunity to go back to the edit list if more changes are necessary. There is one caveat to this report as it exists when you first submit. Because many institutions will report non-need-based students, it's easier to report your entire population rather than just your need-based. These figures will reflect the addition of those students for whom non-need-based aid. I'm not speaking of the federal loans here. I'm speaking of those who might have received other kinds of non-need-based aid. That data is still included in this. We suggest that you select and create a PDF of this for your records because once we have finalized the report and made these profile reports available to you in January, all the non-essential data, all those non-need-based folks, other than, the federal loans, will have been stripped out. So these figures will change. So you'll want a comparison between what you see as a snapshot when you submit your unit record and after the January reports are available. So we suggest that you make PDFs at both points in time, both now and in January. Finally, you're at the point that you can click this Submit Your Unit Record Report. What you'll see next is a little pop-up warning that says, if you submit, you will no longer be able to make changes to the report. Do you wish to continue, yes or no? Ultimately, if you've submitted the report and you find, oh, there is a change I need to make, you can contact us. We can revert your file and allow you to make some additional edits. This is not set in concrete. As long as we're aware of it while we're still working on analyzing the data, we can revert your file and work with you to get the updated information. Once submitted, you'll see here when it was first uploaded and then who actually submitted the report and the date. And you'll also have this confirmation right here where it says submitted. At that point, you can log out, and once you return, for any reason, you will be taken back to this reports page. And you'll see here that program totals report is also available to you here. There's a demographic distribution report and another copy of that discrepancies report for the programs. If you need to come back, you would find this page by going to Unit Record and then clicking Reports. These are available immediately. This other set of profile reports will not be available to you until January. And as we mentioned, in between, we will strip out all the non-need-based information. So in January, when these others are available, we ask that you come back in and perhaps download a PDF of the final totals report here so that you have both on file, and you can kind of take a look at what your data looks like without the non-need-based aid, so that you're not surprised next year whenever you upload your report and you're wondering why your totals don't always look the same, because there are actually two versions. One's that preliminary and then one's the final. The other caveat that I want to mention is that later in the year, not in January, but when we reopen the unit record for the following year, these reports will disappear. So that's why we ask that in January, when the profile reports become available, that you also make copies of these, because they will disappear at some point in time. Okay, I'm going to turn this back over to Marla.
Okay, so that is the end of our formal presentation. Couple of reminders. If you need help, the 2017-18 Unit Record Manual is available online at the wasac.wa.gov/unit-record. So go there. It is full of really good information. And then if you need to, please contact us at the unit record at wasac.wa.gov. That is a mailbox that is specific for unit record questions that come up, and it will go to Anne and a couple of others of us who are on that mailbox. So there are always people who can respond. You have contact information for Anne and for Carla, who is traveling, and for me, and we are happy to respond to any questions regarding the unit record that you may have. And a final reminder is that once we process the recordings, they will be available on the WASAC website. So if you do need to or want to listen to it again, you certainly can do that.
We're going to go ahead and unmute folks. If you have any questions about any of the material, we have reopened the audio platform so that we can take those questions from you.
Since we don't hear any questions, what I'd like to do is just thank you all for attending, and thank you for your time this afternoon.